Now, Carl Jha is the host of the Silk and Steel podcast. He's Chinese, and like me, married to an Indonesian wife, and he comes to us from Bali. I wish I was in Bali right now, Carl. Tell us, how is it there? It's about 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm guessing.
It is. It is. I just woke up. So,
well,
how
you
are
look
George?
remarkably fresh. Thanks for joining us at this unearthly hour for you. I wanted to start off with that news about Visa and I think Mastercard cutting Russia out, which has already now been replaced by the Union card, which will operate through Chinese banking. This is the shape of things to come, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. I mean, this is probably the most self-defeating U.S. policy of 2022. I say that, and there's a lot of self-defeating U.S. policies because the West underestimate its own strength and they underestimate the power of China because China definitely got Russia's back. China and Russia have been had a long-standing friendship, stretched all the way to at least 1989. A lot of people think China and Russia still stuck in the Sino-Soviet split era, but that era ended in 1989 when Gorbachev visited Beijing to meet up with Deng Xiaoping. And since then, China and Russia had excellent relationship. And it's not in the interest of China to see Russia fall before the power of NATO because they know they will be next if Russia does fail. And China now has the power to financially support Russia. So Visa and Mastercard, they're just essentially ceding grounds to the Chinese banking system at this moment.
Yes, and ditto the SWIFT, cancelling Russia's access to SWIFT, though not to the two accounts that deal with the import of oil and gas, although Russia has just closed the main pipeline to Germany. By cutting Russia out of SWIFT, Russia and China swiftly did a deal that will allow Russia to use the clearance apparatus in China.
Yeah, exactly. China actually created the SIP system, which is an alternative to SWIFT back in 2015 in anticipation of U.S. using SWIFT as a financial weapon. Now, SWIFT is one of the bases of U.S. dollar hegemony because, as we know, U.S. dollar enjoyed the status of world currency since World War II because U.S. was the world's largest economy. And then in 1970s, U.S. worked out a deal with Saudi Arabia to price the oil in U.S. dollars, and other oil producers follow suit. So this is what became known as petrodollar. This is the basis of petrodollar, and a financial strength is one of the pillars of the U.S. empire. And it's quite amazing to me now U.S. is sabotaging one of its own pillars of its own hegemony because now Russia will be forced to move off the dollar and to settle its trade with China, one of its top trading partner, in yuan. And this is just the beginning of an end for the dollar hegemony because as of earlier this year, Russia-China trade, only 17% was settled in yuan, but now they're going to move most of it in yuan. And this is just the beginning. I mean, Russia, U.S. did this to Iran a couple of years earlier, right? So we're going to see Russia, Iran, and pretty soon more people is going to switch off this SWIFT system because one of the reasons for the dollar hegemony is because it's not only U.S. was the world's largest economy, relatively stable, but because it's also relatively easy to use the system that's already in place. But now people will look at U.S. and see it as at any moment if their government became target of the U.S. government policy that they could be taken off the SWIFT system. So U.S. dollar is no longer a safe haven currency, and more people are gonna have their backup plans. And this is really, like I said, this is really the stupidest U.S. policy in the 2022 yet.
Yeah, although there's a long way to go in 2022, so we'll wait on that that prediction coming true. But you said NATO has China in its sights next, and that is abundantly clear. I've spent most of the last few months broadcasting in the United States about the hostile moves against China. The sailing of gunboats, the breaches of the One China policy by the United States, top officials going there. Pompeo was recently paid $150,000 to go and give a speech there, inching towards recognition of and independence of Taiwan that most Taiwanese Chinese people don't even want. And just today, the mighty military power of Australia, backed, of course, by its AUKUS partners, America and the UK, refused to rule out arming Taiwan. Now, actually arming Taiwan would be an imminent warning to the Chinese that whilst they have no wish to reunify their country by force, they better reunify it by force before NATO and AUKUS make reunification impossible. They're going to try and turn Taiwan into the new Ukraine.
That is what U.S. would like to do, but unfortunately, the current way to do about it, I doubt they will succeed. First of all, U.S. is trying to goad the People's Liberation Army into carrying out a major military operation against Taiwan. So U.S. will have an excuse to start a huge war in Pacific. This is basically the doctrine of U.S. Navy. As a matter of fact, while the Ukraine war is going on, U.S. Navy just put a statement that U.S. can fight two-front war because it's budget season, and
they showed that in Afghanistan, Carl.
Yeah, I mean, U.S. wanted to. Right now, it's budget season, and U.S. Navy would very much like to have a larger share of its $770 billion military budget pie. They don't want all of that going to Europe. They want to stress their own importance. Therefore, they bring up Taiwan. But U.S. traditionally have been selling weapons to Taiwan under its so-called the Taiwan Relation Act, which doesn't even obligate U.S. to necessarily come to defense of Taiwan. It just says U.S. should help Taiwan to defend itself. And that U.S. military industrial complex has interpreted that as selling these high budget, expensive weapons to Taiwan that the Taiwanese people themselves recognize are probably useless in any kind of war scenario break out. But they understand they have to continually pay this money.
Yeah, it's protection. It's protection money.
Exactly.
It's like the Sopranos or Don Corleone. Protection money.
Exactly. So this is right now. They just want to keep the racket going. I mean, basically, for U.S. military industrial complex, Taiwan is a good grift because they can annually sell Taiwan all these expensive, outdated, useless weapons, and everybody gets a share. People in the Pentagon gets kickback, and Lockheed Martin, they have not tidy profit. So I think this is a goal. Their goal is to keep the tension high so they can keep increase the military budget, keep selling weapons to Taiwan. But I don't think even the crazy hawks necessarily want the actual hot war over Taiwan Strait because China is a nuclear power, and they also understand any kind of hot war, shooting war between U.S. and China will quickly escalate into a nuclear exchange in 20 minutes. So I think their sense of self-preservation is just as strong as ours, George. So I do not foresee active. They planning for active war, but they will definitely keep cranking up the tension because because that's how they profit from this grift.
Well, don't be complacent about that. I've met Steve Bannon, and I assure you, nothing would please him more than standing on the bridge of a U.S. gunboat sailing down the Yangtze. The crazies in Washington would very much like a war with China on the basis, if you think back to the Korean War, where they actively contemplated the use of nuclear weapons before China developed such weapons itself. They now think that they're going to have to fight a war with China eventually, so better do it now than later when China can only be stronger.
There is that thought in Washington that they have a very small, limited time window, maybe 5 to 10 years, where U.S. still enjoy military superiority over China. But yet, U.S. also know they don't no longer have regional dominance around the Taiwan Strait. U.S. used to sell its aircraft carrier group through the Taiwan Strait. Now they only sell one ship at a time because China's land-based missile could saturate the Taiwan Strait at any time. If a war breaks out, any U.S. ship in the Taiwan Strait will be sitting target, and the U.S. Navy understands that. And on top of that, China is in no hurry to militarily resolve Taiwan issue because really the most dangerous time in Taiwan Strait was back in 1958. Right after Korean War. At that time, during the Kinmen crisis, when mainland China and Taiwan government exchanged artillery shells to the scale of several 100,000 artillery shells per day, that time U.S. actually actively contemplated use nuclear weapons against mainland China in case the People's Liberation Army cross the ocean and take the island. But that was back when U.S. actually actively stationed nuclear-tipped missiles on Taiwan, pointed at mainland. But since for the last 30 years, though, not only shelling has stopped, but there's increased economic integration between mainland China and Taiwan. Now there's over 1 million Taiwanese people working, studying, and live on mainland China. The economic 40% of the Taiwan's export go to mainland China. That integration will only deepen as time comes. So China, from China's perspective, China is not a hurry to force the issue by military. But you are right. There are elements in Pentagon that probably want to stir up the tensions and stir up the trouble.
Well, as a famous Chinese man once said, sometimes the enemy struggles mightily to lift a huge stone only to drop it on its own feet. Lastly, and I'm grateful for your time at this hour, China is the main trading partner with an astonishing number of places now in the world, possibly with most countries in the world. Every country in Latin America, for example, from Mexico to Chile, has as its main trading partner China. But I was amazed to discover this afternoon that Germany has China as its main trading partner. We're now sailing into what might become a general European war. And China and Russia are strategic allies, as close as can be. What's that going to mean for European-Chinese relations? How long before the boycott of all things Russian becomes a call to boycott all things China, and then actually there'll be nothing to eat, use, or play with?
Exactly. I mean, in fact, Germany's foreign minister before the war broke out in Ukraine, warned China that Germany will use its economic power if China comes out on the side of Russia. But it's an empty threat because what is Germany going to do? Germany needs China more than China needs Germany. Is Germany going to threaten to cut off sales of luxury car to the Chinese market? That's their largest market, their largest export market. And, you will definitely, I mean, this is, again, EU has already been forced to take side with the United States against Russia when it comes to the European gas deal. But if they're going to do that to their largest trading partner, China, they're really lifting the stone and and hitting their own feet. I mean, I don't see they will go to that extreme because even Germany's denial of certification of Nord Stream 2 to Russia, it's just a temporary thing because that could easily reversible. It's not like they're uninstalling the pipelines, right? So their calculus is probably once the crisis is over, they can review the process and recertify the pipeline again. So I don't see them simultaneously take on China and Russia at the same time. That's just suicidal.
Carl Jacques, thank you for joining us.